All right, right on. Welcome, welcome, and more welcomes. I'd like to thank everyone that's here with me today. And that's a big bowl of gratitude for you and for me to have you on here. I'm very, very happy. Right now, we're going to be talking about a very serious topic. And in light of all the incidents and actions that have happened over the past few days or weeks, we should say, we're going to talk about them in a positive light and a positive way. So tonight we're going to talk about the giblets of ignorance, circumstances that cause thinking to be non-existent. All right, for those of you who are part of our Dreams to Reality Facebook group, if you go in the comments underneath our picture here with the man here who doesn't see or hear, I understand. On that page, you can see how to get in if you're using our Facebook group. You just got to click there, and then it'll say chat restream.io/Facebook, and you can click there. You can click their icon there, and then it'll all you have to do is ask for give it permission so that you can be in our chat, and I hopefully everyone will be in our chat. So let's go here. A big hello in our chat right now. So I'll be talking and answering people in chat. So right now, this is how it go. All right, and there's a big hello from me. And also underneath in the underneath in our comments in chat, you can also go from YouTube. So there's a link in there that all you have to do is touch that link and it'll take you right to our live stream on YouTube. I think we're streaming to about 6 or 7 platforms right now. So depending on what the technology is doing. So, but we're really getting it done. So as we move forward, you guys will move forward. And we like to have multiple platforms where people can chat and they'll show up on our chat stream. So, which is great. Okay. And we've already got, there's a coach. Oh, hello. How are you? So that's a good thing. So we're just talking about the chat. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into this week's events and this past week and what happened. We are on the giblets of ignorance that we're talking about. And one of the things that we talk about is you can follow us on different platforms. You can follow us on Twitter at IncNDH. You can follow us on the gram at NDHG underscore world. And we always want you to be great in our community. Right now, we're going to go ahead and get our bills paid by one of our sponsors, dateapp.com. All right, now we're back. Welcome back. I am David, your host. Right now, we're talking about the giblets of ignorance. All right. The giblets of ignorance, as you see in our picture, as you can see in our picture right now, which is the actual thumbnail that was on Facebook and it's on YouTube. And as you can see, the picture has a man with his arms folded sitting on top the rock of ignorance. And as you notice, there's 2 exclamation points representing his brain, and then there's earplugs. So this posture represents what we see when there's ignorance. One of the situations about ignorance is that it's always bred around knowledge that isn't correct. And so the actions that come with that are based on that particular situation. And one of the problems with it is that it infects everybody. And so what happens, we have what they call ignorant actions leads to ignorant outcomes. And that's a very hefty topic in this podcast today. Because if the action produces the outcome, then the reaction produces a negative event. So let's take an example. Okay. Two people are fighting. Okay. And they're fighting in an environment where people are egging them on. So immediately in this day and age, all of a sudden, this is going to be live streamed or beamed to different social media platforms. Okay, so as they're tussling or fighting, one hits the other first. So as this is being streamed to the different social media platforms, now there's an instant situation because if the police show up, or even if the police don't show up, but let's say they show up, then we have a worldwide situation of where this can be used in court. So if you're the offending party, you've now caught a case, as they say, or you're on your way to getting a case or some kind of repercussion because that ignorant action is going to lead to an ignorant outcome. So now you have a problem and an issue. And if the offended party decides to go and file a civil suit, because maybe, you hit them and maybe some things happen, maybe they broke a tooth or nose bloody, whatever the case may be, then there's another secondary ignorant outcome. And there's many more we could talk about, but that's how it works. So in our previous podcast, in our Thunderstorms of Hate, we really talked about this ignorance. And what we did go into was that a half truth or a lie is told and it's ignorant. And it produces an ignorant outcome because it launches 1,000 ignorant comments and 1,000 ignorant thought processes. And it's taking people with it as it goes. It's like a ship that ran aground and all the people left the ship, but they left the food and everything on the boat. And they wonder why when they come back, their ship is gone. So it's an ignorant outcome. Throughout the Giblets of Ignorance, only way you can move through that is to have facts. And facts always overcome emotions. So if you have to get into an altercation, then you need to stay with your facts and not be mad because of what someone told you or what someone portrayed to you, or you're letting peer pressure, no matter what age group. And these are common topics in the world. They're not nothing new. They're just coming from this podcast. So facts always overcome emotions. We had a classic example a few days ago, or almost a week ago, where we had a standing public official, the head person of a state, give out conflicting information. And we'll call it conflicting because it was actually a lie. But this is what happens when ignorant actions leads to ignorant outcomes. That person had to backtrack because of what happened at that school. That person had to backtrack in what they said. So when you don't think and when you go off your emotions and not the facts, these are topics that happen. Now, do I fault that person? No. Politicians do what they do. The problem lied in the management style. And the management style is you have people that handle that type of situation for you. And we go back to the old adage, hire well, manage less. Hire bad, manage more. And you have to keep your ego out of it. And that's the whole part of it. That's why you say you want to be in your creative mind and you don't want to be in your competitive mind. Competitive mind leads you to ignorant actions and ignorant outcomes. So this particular person had to backtrack a few days later and defend themselves as a politician in an election fueled year of certain positions in this state. And this is why you have to think before you speak. You have to think. Now, accordingly to that situation at that elementary school, and bless those parents and those people that have lost in that situation. A lot of us have seen this problem before. It was the same problem, a different genre. And why I'm explaining this is let's talk a little bit about some of the experiences that have been out there, and we'll talk about how I was able to deal with them. Okay, come from the transportation environment where everything has to be done yesterday, but the paperwork's got to lead. Used to be the paperwork followed, but now the paperwork has to lead. Due diligence and the paperwork has to be done first. Okay, one particular time there was a truck that had been dispatched to a warehouse. Okay, but the warehouse's entrance was weird because it was too small for the truck and it was on a major highway and the trucker could only back in backwards. But he had to back in backwards and there were poles so that the trucker would not be able to hit the walls and it was very narrow. So a lot of truckers would do this at this particular location because the bay door set back off the street about 10, 12 feet. They would just go in the middle of the lane and unload from the middle of the lane in the street in the yellow with the broken lines, the straight lines. So that's how they did it. So there was a veteran trucker. And so this trucker said, I know that I can back in to this particular situation, but he had never been there before. So they called, we talked, said, look, we've sent you over the picture, okay, the due diligence. We've sent you over the picture and we've added the measurements of how big that entrance, that alleyway is versus what you have on your truck. So you had a 53 footer standard, okay? So that meant that the whole entrance was going to be hard on that trucker because he really knew how to drive, but he knew how to drive. But he said, you know what? I cannot go off in the middle of the street because the last trucker had things stolen off the truck. And then they had to stop traffic every time they sent someone out there to get these things off the truck, either with a dolly or with a forklift. So this meant that this trucker was going to take on some risk. Okay. So this was a similar problem to what happened over there at the elementary school. And I'm going to tie it together for you and give you the reasons why here in a minute. Okay. So the trucker was able to back in to that narrow alleyway. He's the first one to ever do it. And so he deserved extra pay for that. But he backed in and he was able to offload that truck and unload that truck in the time frame permitted. Okay. But the part of it, that's the lesson and the blessing, is the trucker had the information of what he needed to do before he got there. It didn't matter what gender, it didn't matter what race, it didn't matter no isms or ideology. It only mattered that the trucker was able to offload the goods from that truck. Want to see what they call a sealed load. So they were able to drive in there, break the seal, drive in there, pull the forklift onto the truck, take the pallets off, and they was able to get it done and load him back up. And so he was on his way once he got out. But because of the due diligence between the dispatcher, and the trucker, what makes it interesting is it's the same problem, different genre. And the reason why it's a different genre is because we're talking about trucking. Okay, we're talking about property risk. Okay, but we're also talking about due diligence. And that due diligence, for those of you that don't know, in this particular situation was the trucker had to have an idea, since he had never been to that location. He had to have an idea through modern technology so that he could back in to that small space. So this was given to him on his paperwork, on his manifest or his BOL. And this was also choreographed between senior staff and dispatch, senior staff being me. So that got the trucker in. And I told him, call me when you get in, walk out front and take a picture of that place so that I would have it to show the truckers that it could be done. So same problem, different genre. Okay. In the shootings at the elementary school, okay, we know from transportation that everything has to be done in real time on demand. That's my nickname, Art Top, real time on demand. So when you have a situation where there's a confined space or there's confined spaces and you've got uh, targets in there, basically, because that's how the shooter is looking at them, that means that you don't have time to wait. So what we feel like from the transportation sector, which goes on, there's thousands and thousands of trips every day where goods and services are being delivered all over the world from that perspective. And what we're saying is dispatch, dispatch, dispatch should have been patched in to the incident commander or to whoever was in charge at that location when those calls came in, those 911 calls, and you had someone in the room that was actually an active participant. So dispatch should have been plugged in to the incident commander or whoever was in charge at that location at that school. This could have solved a lot of problems because you had someone that was actually involved in the situation. They could have talked to dispatch, and dispatch could have patched into the powers that be at that location so that they would know what room that person was in, how many kids was in there, how, everything that was needed. And that's what we call due diligence. Then you can make a qualified judgment based on real-time information. And that's why it's the same problem, different genre. Now, do we fault people in that situation? No. Ignorant actions leads to ignorant outcomes. That's what that is. But it's the same problem, different genre, because we see it every day in transportation. You see it every day when you're getting your kids ready for school or when you're going to work or when you're going to do things. You know, if you live in a certain part of the city, you know what the traffic is going to be. So if your trip to get to your job is over an hour or 45 minutes, whatever it may be, then you have to plan for that. And that's due diligence. That's what we call due diligence. So then it becomes, okay, now when I get up from our previous podcast, when I get up and I get my victories in the morning, that's a victory. When we did the trucker, that was a victory for everyone. And it was victories with an S because the due diligence produced a actionable consequence with an actionable outcome. That was all positive. So that's how we're looking at it. So that's why we say same problem, different genre. So what in your life that you're doing that you have a giblet of ignorance? Is it because you're hard-headed? Is it because you don't listen? Is it because you don't have a protocol or some kind of instruction that can get you going every morning? So we've addressed this in previous podcasts, but we want you to keep winning every day. And that's what we always talk about. So now, the next thing about it, with our picture here, with our man here, you know what I mean? So this is what it means when you're ignorant. Your thought processes are scrambled. You don't hear, you don't follow, you don't understand, and you're sitting on ignorance and you're stubborn. And this is the number one thing that causes problems because that stubbornness will get you into ignorance and will lead you to ignorant actions, which will lead to ignorant outcomes. The second part of that is what we're talking about again. Facts always overcome emotions. So if those people on board at that school would have had the facts, and they would have been relayed in real time on demand. So now it's just a matter of, okay, who do we have here? Okay. Now, what could have happened since the school was only but so big? So what I'm looking at from transportation, and if you use Waze, if you use Google Maps and so forth and so on, they give you a map view. They give you can close it in on the plus or minus to see what you're looking at, because those maps are bouncing off satellites. So they give you the pictures, and a lot of satellites are within 2 to 3 inches of where you want to go. Okay, so you needed to have, at this particular situation, they needed to have the plans for the school. Okay, they're in this room, or they're in these rooms. This is where the shooter's at, because we got real time information. Now we can go ahead and breach, or now we can do what we need to do. But I can understand the law enforcement side, because it was damned if they do, damned if they don't. Who do they have that was available? So this whole thing needed to take on another life of its own, and the decisions had to have been made in real time. And this is what we get when you get complacency, because sometimes with complacency, there's problems. There is an old African proverb of, where many are gathered, there is much to be said. So that's what's happening with the media, and that's what's going on. And this is the correct definition of what happened. Okay, in hindsight, we can look at it and say, this is this. Police follow their doctrines, okay, but the shooter was on a different time frame. So the shooter was in the future, and the law enforcement was behind. That's how that situation was, because you create your future every minute. By what you do now is going to affect what you do later. That's why we always say the ignorant actions lead to ignorant outcomes. Now, are we saying those people are wrong that was there? No, we're just saying, coming from transportation, when you sit at home and you get your stuff on the right time, they say, okay, your package is going to be delivered at 9 or between 9 and 12. And sometimes they don't always hit that, but at least you know that day your package is going to be delivered. And if you call in, they might say, okay, we're too late, we're going to bring it back over there tomorrow, or you can come down here and pick it up. That's how it works. So that's real time on demand information. When you get mad at your spouse, or mad at your significant other, or mad at your kids, that's real time on demand. But you got to stay in your creative mind. Maybe your kid does certain things that you don't like, which is common. Okay, nobody's perfect, but you got to stay in your creative mind, because you can't get mad. And it's another African proverb: no matter how hot your anger may be, it cannot cook. That's a very important. I wish, if I get angry, I wish I could go to the stove and just cook it, and then eat it, and then sit down and shut up. But it's not going to happen that way. It's not happening. All right. And in this particular situation over there at that school, the elementary school, and bless all those that participated and did what they needed to do. You want to resolve conflicts all the time, as expedient as you can, regardless of doctrine, regardless. Your wisdom outweighs strength. And this is another African proverb. And the reason why wisdom outweighs strength is because in that particular situation, if everything was taken care of the way it's supposed to be taken care of, then it will outweigh the strength, which ended up happening because someone said, okay, we know who's in there, we know what's going on, we got to go ahead and breach. That we're just going to have to do it. This is the only way we're going to solve this. But before they went in, they had information. See it out. They had to due diligence. So this is very important. This is why it's so hard. This is why you see giblets of ignorance everywhere. Let's go on to the next example. But we're going to bless those people that did what they needed to do, and those that are helping those people there, and those that are, we know there's a lot of people hurting, the grief counselors and all the support personnel, and we want to wish them the best and to help them move through their pain if they ever can. So that's what we're going to say there. We're going to leave that alone. All right. That wisdom outweighs strength is a common situation. You see it with sports. Right now, you got the NBA going on, and now they got the two teams ready to do battle for the championship, or for the ship, like they like to say. So one of the best things about it is what wisdom is going to play a part for which team to win, because wisdom is going to outweigh strength. So the coaching, the players, everybody's in top shape. So who can negate their issues the most to win this title? Whether they got athletic issues, whether they got limitations, whether they got injuries, whether somebody's going through something at home, somebody's having a problem, or somebody just can't handle the pressure. That's why wisdom outweighs strength, because you put the wisdom in there, you scout the other teams, you watch film, you understand who your opponent is, doing your due diligence, so that when you go out there and step on that field, whether it be in life, whether it be with family, whether it be with concubines, whether it be with just out here with yourself, going to the doctor and understanding what it is when you come out of there and what's your game plan. That wisdom will always outweigh strength. You can be strong, but your mentality and intellect can be wrong. And that's what creates the giblets of ignorance. That's one of the Satans. So we're going to take a nice little 60-second break right now. And we're gonna do that. So whatever you need to do, get on with it. And we're gonna take 60 seconds here so that we can be the best we can be for those that are listening. Here we go. Thank you. All right, right on. Thank you. Hopefully you're back now, and let's get on with it. One of the problems with ignorance is that it permeates our culture and it permeates what's going on. There's a lot of issues right now with what's happening out here in the world, in certain cities, with people that are having delayed success, whether it be homeless or those type of situations. And so what's happening is there's no accountability for the money because of the ignorance. And the ignorance is simply this: why solve a problem when you keep getting paid on it? That's the ignorance. But what happens is, in our society, because we have so many people that are having a problem right now, it's now showing in the homelessness, living on the street. If you live in an area like that and you see homeless, you got to ask yourself, well, is this eventually going to affect me? You have to go through that. You have to say, now, we're not going to talk about the homeless people. We're not going to talk about the homeless situation. We're just going to say, follow the money. Look it up and follow the money so you can find out what the outcomes have been with what's been given. And that's a very important situation. But that's part of a giblets of ignorance, because you see it, but the reasons behind it may be varied. But what happened to the money that was given? Where did it go? That's why they say follow the money trail. So you got to follow the money to find out what happened. So it depends on how much you want to dig. But if you have a heart for that, then you might want to try that. You might want to see to find out. So you keep yourself educated to understand how it's going to affect your property values, how it's going to affect your quality of life in your neighborhood, how what's happening if you have things that are happening that are not good for the neighborhood. So that's what you call due diligence. But that's why you can't stay ignorant of situations. The giblets of ignorance, they permeate a lot. We're going to go into our next topic about the giblets of ignorance. All right. There's circumstances that cause thinking to be non-existent. Okay, we had the COVID. Okay, we had the COVID situation where people were having problems breathing and having respiratory problems amongst, amongst many different situations. Okay, there's a population out here that are asthmatics and have respiratory problems or COPD and different scenarios out here. You got to ask yourself, it was such a panicky situation. Why weren't these people talked to first, and why weren't these techniques used to give people breathing coaches? If you're an asthmatic, that means you're used to breathing with your lungs constricted, or COPD, that means you're used to breathing with having problems. And so you might go through your life trying to find a way to be able to heal it naturally, or some kind of pill, or some kind of inhaler, or something, or a combination thereof. So why weren't these types of people talked to understand? So maybe a lot of people could have survived. Maybe, we don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I do know about constricted breathing. And so that's a part of life that you see. Those was giblets of ignorance. Everybody running around, but nobody talking to the people that was living with it already. Not the COVID, but living with constricted breathing. They have experience. So if somebody had been living with constricted breathing and they were born like that, and say they were 60 or 70 years old, that means they had 60 or 70 years of knowledge of how to get through constricted breathing and those kind of attacks and panic attacks and whatever else comes with that. And if you had doctors that were eye, ear, nose, and throat respiratory specialists, they should have been consulted first. And then in a real time on demand world, those people with constricted breathing could have gave their knowledge as far as what needed to happen when people were coming in and they couldn't breathe. But this is what we talk about with the giblets of ignorance: is you cannot be a person that knows so much that you don't learn. And that's a big issue out here. And that's why it's an ignorant thought, because that person knows everything according to them, and then they never move forward because they always have emotions about certain situations. And some of us, we're all guilty of this at some point in our life. But what you realize as you get older, or what you realize with experience, is that you have to have the facts, the due diligence, to always overcome the emotions. And the reason why we're stuck with that is because these are truths that never change in the world. And that's what it is. So the next part, another old African proverb is, an open mind only hurts those who fear their own mistakes. And let me repeat that once again. We're going to go through this. An open mind only hurts those who fear their own mistakes. And the reason why is because they don't want to look in the mirror and look at themselves. So when that politician had to go look in the mirror after having made that mistake, then that person had to come back and correct that mistake, because there was, millions of people looking to see what that was about. So that politician did the right thing in the end, but it was just a fact because the emotions were not grounded in facts. And that was what was given to that person. But that person also has a department that should handle that type of things and let that department speak. And that department had direct access to the law enforcement on the ground, or boots on the ground. So, and this is causing a problem in our society, because now you have people that are pissed off and mad because they're emotional, which is, that situation was very emotional, and it still is. And we had previous shootings in Buffalo. We had similar situations. Like we say all the time, same problem, different genre. It's the same problem. That's what it is. And that's why facts always overcome emotions, because these are the facts and this is what we need to do. So one of the things with it is that we know that we know that all of these things that are happening, and here's the definition of ignorance. All right, we've got stuff. And this is from Merriam-Webster since 1828. And this is their definition: the state or fact of being ignorant, lack of knowledge, education, or awareness. And when they say education, they don't always mean school. They mean some people learn on the job. Some people do what they do. And then a lot of times with ignorance, attitudes are born out of them. And then that's what makes it wrong, because those particular situations always produce ignorant measures. So one of the big things that to get out of this Giblets of Ignorance, it's a long conversation, and hopefully I've sparked you to have conversations with you and yours in your time and in what you need to do. We're happy to talk today. We're happy to give out the Giblets of Ignorance today, circumstances that cause thinking to be non existent. The reason being is because right now we got the sign language, which is shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. I don't want to be right. I just want to be where I need to be conducive to advance forward. That's it. What's conducive for me, and how can I affect other people so that I can be of service to help them to move forward? And this is a valid situation. And that's how you get a society and a community and a culture. So here on Dreams to Reality, our group, we're trying to build a culture, and we're doing that of can do people, or people that are doing, people that are making, people that are going forward. And that's what we like here about it, is because everybody can learn and everybody can learn from everyone else. And that's what we like. Remember, wisdom outweighs strength. So we have so much wisdom in our group that sooner or later it'll percolate to the top. And it's starting to right now. So hopefully everyone's having a great day. So I want to leave you with this, my old sayings. Blessings to everyone, and thank you for listening to me tonight or today. What I want for myself, I want for others. And for this week, please keep pushing forward. Please keep being you, and try to be the best you can be, or be the best that you can be. Because only you know what your walk is, and only you know what your pains are and what your victories are. But wake up every morning and have 10 victories before you leave the house so that your day can go positive. So we're saying 10, the magic number 10, is because you do 10 victories, you're going to have a great day. I guarantee it. And we can put that out there. And I guarantee it for myself, actually. So it's been working for me, and I'm sure it can work for you. So be blessed and do the things necessary that's going to make you a better person day in and day out. Thank you. And we wish you a happy night and a happy week.